Chapter 5, The Light Eaters. An ear to the ground. It is nighttime in the rainforest of southeastern Cuba, and a long-tongued bat is sailing between the trees, plucking a clear path through the dense canopy at high speed and in total darkness. All gossamer, wing membrane, and stealth fluff. Its whole body weighs hardly a third of an ounce. A paper airplane. The bat lets out a pulse of tones, listens for the echoes as they return to its oversized jackal ears. A cavalcade of clicks conjure a landscape of objects and air as a tiny mammal tilts its wings to slice through the tangle of vines. All of a sudden, a tone comes back clear and crisp, again and again, in the same way, despite the angle of incidence that changes over and over as the bat flies around and comes closer. The sound is irresistible to it in its clarity, a lure, a beacon in the night. I almost said a bacon. You know that Nick Jonas song, Bacon? Throw some bacon on it. You know, bacon. Throw some bacon on it. The one thing I love. Never mind. The sound is irresistible in its clarity, a lure, a beacon in the night. The bat arrives to find a vine hanging with a ring of sumptuous wine-covered flowers, their pollen-tufted faces tilted toward red pitchers full of nectar. The bat unfurls its long tongue and squeezes its face between the flower and its pitcher. It begins to lap nectar, hovering in midair as it drinks. Its back takes a dusting of pollen in the process. Just above the ring of flowers grows a series of glossy leaves, conspicuously oblong and concave like upright canoes. The deep, rounded shape reflects the same clear echo from many angles. To a moving bat in the acoustic mess of the forest, a loud, consistent echo coming from the same location stands out. And for a rare bat-pollinated vine scattered here and there across a thickly vegetated landscape, standing out is crucial. Markgravia Ivinia, this ruby-colored sonar reflector, was the second vine found to be acoustically tailored to correspond with bats. The first was a flowering vine that grows on the edge of a rainforest across Central America. That vine, Macuna holtoni, kind of sounds like Hakuna Matata in a weird way. Not really Hakuna Matata, but Macuna holtoni produces many small flowers and releases its pollen explosively. To reach the nectar, a bat must land on the flower and press its snout into the slit between the two wing-like petals. Fascinating. There's a reading that I did the other day, not from this book at all. It was a random reading that I was randomly drawn to do about death. But it's called Healing the Split. I know that this says slit, but I'm just saying that there's something about lighting up of the acoustics as well as of the interest, peaking of interest, having to kind of peer between the veil, never mind. To reach the nectar, a bat must land on a flower and press its snout into a slit between the two wing-like petals. To reach the nectar, a bat must land on a flower and press its snout into a slit between two wing-like petals. The pressure of the push causes a second pair of fused petals within, called a keel, to burst open. Inside the keel, bent under tremendous tension, is a sternum full of pollen. Once the bat bursts the keel, the sternum catapults most of the pollen load onto the butts. I said butts because it's bat's rump. I'm talking about derriere, like your posterior. Yeah, so this pollen just kind of like goes onto the bat's rump. Scientists watch as bats consistently land only on the flowers that still had their hidden pollen keels intact while avoiding the depleted ones. There were so many flowers. How did the bats find the right ones? A small concave appendage flanks the unopened flowers like an extra petal on a hinge. Researchers found that this acts as a perfect mirror for the bat sonar. Oh. The echo is sent back from multiple angles, which was of astonishingly high amplitude, they wrote, much like the echo from the leaves of Markgravia. Once the flower had disgorged its pollen on a bat butt, the mirror would lower itself, taking itself out of the acoustic arena. Bats could no longer find the flower and were directed instead to the ones where their mirrors were still up. Huh. Similar to, smoke and mirrors with lasers. So a bounce back of information depending on how reflective a surface may be. Plants have a particularly close relationship to sound. Sound suffuses everything in their environment, so it would make sense for them to take an active part in so vast and varied a sensory world, especially since so many of the creatures the plants must attract and repel make very telltale sounds of their own. In response, plants have morphed their bodies to engage with the world of frequency and vibration. It is not an exaggeration to say that they've grown ears. In 2011, two researchers in Missouri did a wild thing. They put guitar pickups on a plant and proved it could hear. The idea, as with many good ideas, came accidentally. Rex Cockcroft, an animal communicator expert, was studying treehoppers. These insects are fantastically peculiar looking, with iridescent exoskeletons, and in some species, a single preposterously tall horn swooping directly up from their head, like a unicorn partial to right angles. I want to know what a tree hopper looks like now. Bear with me. Oh, well, that's not what I expected. Tree hopper. Oh, they come in a whole bunch of different shapes, colors, sizes. I don't know why that's surprising to me in any way. However, let's carry on. The tree hoppers, Cockcroft observed, intentionally jiggle their abdomens very fast, sending a thrumming vibration down through their legs and into the branch of the wood or tree shrub they stand on. Those vibrations travel through the plant and are picked up by other tree hoppers who are equipped with highly sensitive legs adapted to the task of acting like phonograph needles. So, like the disc the record would play, and the phonograph is like got a huge horn. It sticks out kind of like a cornucopia. You put the needle down, music starts coming out as the disc is spinning. That's what they're talking about. It was, Cockcroft had found, a tree hopper's way of saying, "Hi, I'm here." The insects were essentially using the plants as a tin can telephone. Interesting. Last reading, I actually picked up on that intuitively. I had read this portion of the book already, so maybe I was just kind of unconsciously reminiscing on that. However, interesting. It was interesting work. But one day, every recording Cockcroft tried to make of these vibrations was contaminated by another noise. It was grating. It was rhythmic. It wasn't a tree hopper. There were all these caterpillars chewing, said Heidi Apple, a senior research scientist at the University of Toledo, Ohio, who became his collaborator. An alluring possibility dawned on her. Caterpillars are the can opener machines of the insect world. Actually, I like the sound, Apple said. When I suggested the analogy, amplified to volume a human can detect, caterpillar chewing sounds like blocky goat teeth, masticating dry hay, or a handful of gritty pebbles being rubbed together in one's hand. Which I suppose that can be strangely satisfying sound, like a cartoon character chewing a carrot, but without amplification, it's incredibly subtle. The sound of caterpillar chewing vibrates a leaf up and down only by a few 10,000ths of an inch. Apple met Cocraft at a seminar at her university during the cookies and coffee break. The two introduced themselves by way of what the system that they were studying as social behavior typical of natural scientists. I work on how plants can tell they've been damaged and what they can do about it. Apple remembers saying, if you've never read the book to your children, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, do so. That was me trying to be a tree hopper. Like, read that book to your children. It's encouragement. Read it. Read it. Anyway, I work on how animals communicate to each other through vibrations in plants, Cocraft said. He told her about the problem with his setup he'd run into a few days before. It wasn't working because there was caterpillars feeding on it, he said. There was a pause in the conversation. They looked at each other. You don't suppose the plant is using those, Apple said. It was just an aha moment, she remembers. Together they hatched a series of experiments. The reasoning went something like this. Caterpillars chewing is ubiquitous to a plant's life. It makes very distinctive sound. Acoustic vibrations travel faster along a plant body than virtually any other signal a plant could possibly pick up on. Wouldn't it be advantageous, they thought, for the plant to be able to sense them? But they were wading into some troublesome territory. The specter of the secret life of plants still loomed over botany some 40 years after publication, asking whether plants could evolve to hear, or at least interpret vibrations that we think of as sound, was sure to raise eyebrows. Even Apple's husband, fellow plant scientist Jack Schultz, was a detractor. Schultz had become one of the earliest to claim that trees communicated through airborne chemicals, a very popular thing to wag one's finger at in the 1980s if you were a plant scientist. Also, don't let your children watch this movie, but it's called The Happening. Chemical wafting of plants through the air as communication signals, very much utilized in that horror movie. It's a very horrible thing. But it's just a movie, so just go watch it if you're an adult and you're into Paloma Ford suicidal moments. Anyway, it took years, at least into the mid-2000s, for chemical communication to be seen not as ridiculous, but as a scientific fact. He looked at me and said, "You're nuts. You're crazy." Apple remembers. That's the inherent skepticism of science, she said charitably. It was a warm day in early September, and she was standing outside her house near Toledo, Ohio, looking at a tree. Schultz was indoors, working on their latest co-authored paper. They'd been collaborating for over 30 years. Apple isn't a great believer in the plant intelligence debate that's overtaken their field. She preferred to relegate it to the philosophy corner while the scientists do the hard science. The words that scientists use are important because what they're working with is complex. Using mushy words like thinking or communicating just confuses things. I'm humbled by how much I don't know. But when it comes down to how we define things, I'm not sure that's reconcilable. Still, there is no doubt in her mind that plants can sense sounds. Oh my gosh, she said, turning back towards me. A huge pale paper wasp nest was hanging from a branch. She stood there and admired it a moment and kept walking around her yard. 3 acres of majestic oak floodplain forest with a fox running through it. She reached the little sugar water feeder she'd hung out for hummingbirds. It was empty, depleted faster than seemed possible for hummingbirds. But not too fast for a colony of wasps. Ah, she said. What I've done is created the conditions for the wasp house. Plants and insects interact all day long and at every stage in both of their life cycles. It may be the most important relationship in either of their lives. If the insect in this type that drink nectar or eat leaves, which is to say the great majority of them, plants and insects together make up about half of all multicellular organisms on Earth. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that theirs is one of the most important relationships on the planet. When they decided to test plant hearing, Cocroft and Apple were dealing with cabbage white caterpillars, pudgy grass-green creatures that devour a leaf quite fast. Here's how a cabbage white caterpillar eats a plant. It sticks each of its nub feet on opposite sides of the plant's edge of a leaf, raises its thumb of a head, and begins to chew in a downward line, back towards its own body, so it kind of makes a U shape. Then it unsticks and resticks each of its nub feet on a ripple back to front, and in this way undulates wormishly forward a hair. It's weird. So like does a U-shaped thing and then like eats until it's flat and then does it again and then eats until it's flat and then does it again. I'm not really like doing that very well. It's like makes a U shape with its body and then eats until, well, this half the body would go this way. And anyway, eats until it's flat and then it makes a U and then it eats until it's flat. Anyway, you understand what I'm trying to say. And then it does it again, raising its head, chomping down in a line, and after a few scoots, it leaves behind a negative space in the shape of a crescent moon, where green flesh used to be. Look at any leaf. If you see its edge cutting its crescents like a paper snowflake, a caterpillar was there and is now briefly satisfied. The plant has every interest in avoiding this inconvenient dismantling. All of these useful chloroplasts, all the photosynthesis potential, carried off in the belly of a gelatinous insect. The good news for plants is that they've built a lot of ingenious ways to put an end to this, while a caterpillar is mid-meal, or at least to avoid its cousins joining in. As we have seen, some plants will pump out bitter tannins in a bid to taste disgusting. It's basically similar to a human who just decides that they're not going to shower anymore. I've never seen, 40 Rock? But apparently there's a woman in 40 Rock who's discovered that if she just doesn't shower, she like pushes away everyone else around her so that they don't want to be in her vicinity. I can understand that wholeheartedly. That's similar to what this is doing. Tannins, if consumed by caterpillars, greedy ones, doesn't sit well with them, so the leaf just makes itself tannin filled. I think there's also this movie that's completely unrelated. I don't know why my brain does this. The Royal Tenenbaums. Anyway. Others will manufacture their own insect repellent, which is, in many cases, the bit of the plant humans enjoy most. It's the rich oregano oil and oregano, the sharp spice in a horseradish root. Sometimes the approach is more sinister. There's a horror movie called Sinister too. These are little tidbits that nobody ever needs to know, but my brain wants to regurgitate it, so I'm regurgitating. One devilish case has been found in the humble tomato. The tomato plant will inject something into its leaves that makes the caterpillar look up from their chewing and turn to eye their fellow caterpillars. Soon, the leaf becomes irrelevant. The caterpillars begin to eat each other. It is pretty sinister. Tomatoes are evil if they can do that. Like, make you want to look. Just imagine if there was like that same poison put into human food at like a dose that would affect humans. Just means that you would lose all interest in your food and you would become a zombie. You'd want to eat other humans. I guess you wouldn't become a zombie necessarily, but definitely cannibalistic. Like Hannibal Lecter. Hello, Clarissa. But as we saw in Gilroy's lab, the leaf reaction to being bitten isn't limited to just that leaf. The bite triggers a cascade of hormonal changes in the whole plant, which means different plant parts have a way of talking to each other. Electricity appears to be one explanation, but even the rate that electricity moves through the plant body on the scale of 0.05 meters per second is slower than some of the reactions scientists have observed. One way this threat might be communicated, it seems, is through vibrations we pick up as sound. Acoustic vibrations travel extremely quickly. In a rigid woody plant, they travel at thousands of centimeters per second, a rate that declines in parallel to the plant's general floppiness. So the more floppy, the less conductive to sound, as a rule of thumb. But is still in all cases very fast. Could plants be said to hear their invaders? It's like that. Pretty sure Obi-Wan Kenobi heard that. Or whenever you hear that, what does it make you think of? Invaders? Darth ones? Anyway, to find out, Apple and Cocroft decided to test Arabido. I cannot stand this word. I cannot stand it. Because I can't pronounce it. Once I learn how to pronounce it, it'll be my favorite word ever. Favorite word ever, I'm sure. But it's Arabidopsis. 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 Oh, like arrivederci. Never mind. Arabidopsis. I got it. With the sound of something that would surely eat it. Okay, to find out, Apple and Cocroft decided to test Arabidopsis with the sound of something that would surely eat it, a cabbage white caterpillar. For the experiment, they decided to use piezos, guitar pickups. If you've never heard of piezoelectricity, go take a look at that. Tuned to the exact frequency of a cabbage white caterpillar chewing. As a control, they clipped piezos to a group of other Arabidopsis plants, but those were left silent. Okay, so basically, they clipped guitar pickups to two different groups of plants and then tried to test whether or not the frequency of cabbage white caterpillar chewing would affect them. In their first experiment, they played back the sound of the caterpillar chewing, sending minuscule vibrations through the leaves, but how to test if the plant was responding? A plant attacked can respond right then or can take note of what happened and then be primed to react more quickly later, Apple said. So they took the guitar pickups off the plants and tested them with actual caterpillars. Then they had to wait to get the leaves analyzed in a lab to see if they really were producing defensive sounds or compounds. Really? Apple said aloud to an empty room when she saw the results. She went to the lab and asked the technician to please double check her numbers. The technician sent them back again. Still bonkers. The signal was clear. The plants could hear the caterpillars. She called Cocroft. You're not going to believe this. They got together and tried to think of every possible way that they could have made a mistake. Maybe this is plants responding to anything, not specific to insects, she surmised. This is the last page I'm going to read because my mouth is getting tired of talking about. I'm not getting tired of reading, but getting tired of reading the words, saying the word. Anyway, you get what I mean? Yeah. She surmised they repeated the experiment with lots of controls. They used a small fan to simulate a gentle wind. Maybe that made the plants put up their defenses. They tried playing back the sound of a leafhopper mating song. It was the exact same amplitude as the sound of the caterpillars chewing, but it forms a different rhythmic pattern. The eripatosis did nothing in response. Leafhoppers, after all, don't eat eripatosis. All of this work only made it clear the plant was responding specifically and exclusively to the sound of its genuine predator chewing. We're going to stop with that mastication right there because my mouth needs somewhat of a rest. I'll just finish this paragraph and then I'll stop. Yeah. Of course, that resulted in big grins, Apple said. And science progresses understanding things in largely incremental doses, and most of us spend our careers, let's just say it's very common for experiments not to work. But when they do, what they tell us about how the world works, they tell us in tiny pieces. It's like bricks in a wall. They accrue. But this wasn't a tiny piece. It was evidence that plants really could hear in their own earless way. Sound to them is pure vibration, and they will do something about it when they sense a vibration that they know is associated with their own harm, like a caterpillar mouth masticating plant flesh. That's so brilliant. Okay, look, I swear I was not making this up. This is the end of that masticating. We're gonna mental mastication ceases here. That was pages 101 to 107. Let's get some, let's use the map oracle. Nicole Barron Reed. Nicolette. I know I'm Baron Reed. I don't know why I'm thinking of, okay, unexpected visitors number 41 in the reverse coming out. I'm kind of going to try to fly through this part because compass in the reverse coming out. And gentle gardener number 2. So, and then we've got dry desert in the reverse. Basically, we're talking about pieces, or guitar pickups, the understanding of vibrational frequency and the way that you are able to discern between those things that can hurt, harm, or otherwise damage you. If you're, let's pretend we're plants. Yes, we're playing pretend. Just go with it. And then also those aspects of the world that actually might help you, because it would be, beneficial or advantageous, as they put it, to actually understand signals, distress signals from other plants coming from around you. So if you hear a whole bunch of people screaming outside your house, are you going to go outside? Is that the moment that you're going to decide to open your door and walk outside? Or are you going to look through your peephole and be like, what the heck is going on? You're going to go to the window, try to figure out what's going on first before you open the door, just in case there's been a zombie outbreak of tomato eating caterpillars of oversized growth that have decided to turn on each other and no longer want to eat tomatoes. They just want to eat each other. Okay, that's what I'm getting here. Unexpected visitors and this compass, that's the discernment, is a compass. Unexpected visitors being those things that could hurt, harm, or otherwise damage you. This is not available. When this discernment has been made, it is no longer available, and that is the truth. The 2, 1 + 1 = 2, in this specific case, makes or breaks the garden, right? And if you can be gentle about gardening, gently. When kids are little and they want to pull the tail of cats or pull on the jowls, like the jaw of a dog, you got to tell them to be gentle. And if they're not, then the reaction is not going to be good, right? So if this is the tomato plant, if the tomato plant already told you, I don't want these caterpillars on me, okay? No caterpillars. I'm telling you, I've discerned that they're not good for me. We don't align. This is not the direction I want to go. You got to be gentle with them. If you decide to go ahead and put those caterpillars all over it, you're not going to have any harvest. Understood? Yeah, look, here's Peaks of Joy, number 33, right underneath it. She's kind of like, whoa, I'm out of here, right? That's what's going to happen, is that the caterpillars will take over, and that's that. Gonna have a whole bunch of tannin-filled, really oily substances that are coming from the tomato tree, which may or may not be a good thing. This is just reading the energies, though, right? Let's use the plant deck really quick. Ugh, I'm pressed for time. I was trying to keep this under 30 minutes, but I don't think it's gonna make it. Yeah. Acerola came out on Unexpected Visitors, number 41 in the reverse. Commonly found in supplement form due to the berry decomposing 5 days after harvest. Acerola decomposes 5 days after you pick it. Okay, we're taking these. This is peas and shiitake. Sorry, I'm not trying to laugh. Got acerola. Got the peas here. McGregor Mendel discovered the basics of genetics by crossbreeding peas. And then here, the shiitake mushroom. Don't be talking shit. Okay, just kidding. All right, I had to make at least one crappy little joke about this. Gentle Gardener. It came out on top of Gentle Gardener shiitake, the second most commonly eaten mushroom in the world. Okay, so if you want these mushrooms to grow peacefully so that they can be the second most common, second most eaten mushroom in the whole entire world, the whole entire thing, okay, you can't leave it decomposing for 5 days and then crossbreed it genetically or think that it wants to crossbreed genetically. No, it doesn't. Okay? That's the message. This right here is not unexpected. We know we've got 5 days to get this done. And if it's not done in 5 days, decomposition. Might as well just put it in the compost. Okay? Compost pile. Trash. Then we've got the compass here. The compass is not, look, some of these don't want to be crossbred. No. Mm-mm. Some species don't like that. Some of them do. Sometimes you can make a hybrid plant, but it's usually within its own species. If you've ever grown any type of fruit or vegetable for that matter, you do know that there's gender among plants as well. So crossbreeding with the compass here kind of denotes like this is a vine that you don't want to grow. It's like Jack and the Beanstalk. Okay. Yes, you want the magic beans, right? Beans, the magical fruit. But you don't want to eat them and then 5 hours later be in the same bed as somebody that ate a whole bunch of these beans. It's going to be a stinky situation for everyone involved. I'm talking out the wazoo, okay? Gotta be gentle with your nose, gentle with the perception of your ears. Same thing with the plants. You're gonna have a very empty bed if you eat the magical fruit and then cohabitate. Tell you, that's not a good idea. It's the same difference, Don't really want to be that caterpillar on the tomato plant that doesn't like you. So you ate too much you're very, very hungry caterpillar, ate very, very, very too much of this specific tomato plant, right? And then forgets about the whole tomato in the first place and then just decides to go to shit and start eating each other's face off. Like, let's not do that. Let's not and say we did. Yeah. Kind of like that. Ooh. Okay. So we've got garlic and Enokitaki. Enoki. I don't know why Enochian is coming through. There's Enochian writing. I think Enoch has something. Anyway. Also, if you've ever seen Supernatural with Dean, I think he runs into a lot of Enochian writing. Anyway, this is most commonly used in warm dishes like soups, stews, and stir-fry dishes. See that? That mushroom right there, that really common second most eaten mushroom in the world, is not going to be growing in this dry ass desert if someone is already going crazy over the tomatoes. Okay? No. You do not want to be in the vicinity of another caterpillar. Those caterpillars should not crossbreed at that time that they're eating poisonous tomatoes. Okay? It's not a good time. It's garlic to a vampire. Okay? No, don't do it. You think the magical fruit will give you some bad sense to try eating garlic and then breathe on everything? Your whole sensory system will catch fire. That's all I have. Just kidding. I was just a little joke. Don't take it too seriously. Have a good day.